2.5 miles from Balmoral Castle, set in 8,000 acres of pine forest on the south bank of the River Dee, there is a small white Scottish manor house called Birkhall. It belonged to the Queen Mother for 53 years. In the winter, when she left, the house was closed, the sheets were taken off the furniture, and the gamekeeper from Glenmuick estate would walk past the locked front door once a week to check the latch. Between the years 1985 and 1997, there was a particular bedroom in this house, the royal suite, above the main staircase, that the staff would prepare on alternate weekends for a guest. Her name was Camilla. She was not the Queen Mother's guest. She was Charles's. That sentence is the entire video. Everything that follows is the receipts. Birkhall was built in 1715. It was a small Scottish lodge with cream-colored harled walls, 3 floors, an L shape, a view of Lochnagar in the distance, and a south-facing slope at 600 feet above sea level. Prince Albert bought it in 1849, along with the rest of Balmoral. For most of the 19th century, it was a staff cottage on the Balmoral estate. In 1932, King George V lent it to his second son and his daughter-in-law, Bertie and Elizabeth, the Duke and Duchess of York. They holidayed there for 5 autumns before the abdication put them on the throne. After George VI died in February of 1952, Elizabeth was no longer queen, but Queen Mother, and Birkhall became hers, by use, by association, and by the kind of household understanding that holds in a monarchy without being written down. She would keep it for the next 50 years. In the mid-1950s, her daughter, now Queen Elizabeth II, paid for the house to be extended. A corrugated iron-roofed addition was knocked down. A new wing went up, with a drawing room downstairs and bedrooms above. The new wing connected to the old house through a round staircase tower. The Queen Mother's longtime secretary, Arthur Penn, arranged the rooms. The walls were hung with Cecil Beaton portraits, Highland landscape paintings by Sir Edwin Landseer, and the Sir Dighton Probyn cartoon collection. The grandfather clocks that she collected were lined up in the corridors. In 1980, for her birthday, her daughter built her a new kitchen. Birkhall was, by every public account, the Queen Mother's beloved Highland retreat. That was the polite version. The polite version is the one that ran in every obituary on the 31st of March, 2002. The polite version is the one in the gardening magazines. The polite version is the one in the country life features, where Charles is quoted saying the river is the magic. The polite version is the one in the Hello magazine photo galleries, where pastel blue walls and tartan carpets and Vanity Fair prints along the staircase are presented as the small, cozy family corner of a sprawling royal estate. The polite version is in 2026 the only version any tourist on the D-side coach tour will hear. None of it is wrong. All of it is what was meant to be visible. The story of this video is what was happening in the same house when nobody was looking. Here's the thing about the polite version. Between the mid-80s and the late 90s, there was a second arrangement running through the house, and the audience who watched the obituaries through the spring of 2002 was not told about it. The arrangement is what the audience has been pointing at for years in the comment sections of the channel's 3 videos that name the house in passing without ever building a video around it. The 42-like comment calls it the actions of a madam. The 39-like comment calls the enabling of Charles's adultery disgusting beyond words. The 7-like comment names Birkhall directly as a trysting house. The audience already has the verdict. This video is the receipts. Birkhall is not at Balmoral. Birkhall is in a different valley. The estate is on the River Muick, a tributary of the Dee, which it joins about a mile northeast of the house, just outside the village of Ballater. The distance from Birkhall to Balmoral Castle by road is about 7 miles, close enough that the staff overlapped, the gamekeepers overlapped, the suppliers overlapped, the social register overlapped. Far enough that what happened in one house didn't have to be visible at the other. That gap, 7 miles wide, is the architecture of the entire arrangement. The staff at Birkhall during the Queen Mother's tenure were small in number and long in tenure. William Talon, Backstairs Billy, was her page of the backstairs from 1951 until her death in 2002. 51 years. He traveled with her to Scotland every summer. Reginald Wilcock, his partner, was the page of the presence, second in the household hierarchy. The Birkhall housekeepers, the cooks, the maids, the boatmen, the gardeners, the gamekeepers, a small permanent staff with a small augmentation each summer, were the people who knew what the weekend logs said. The weekend logs themselves do not survive in any publicly accessible archive. That is the silence the video has to walk through. Tom Quinn, who wrote the only book-length biography of William Talon, describes the page and employer relationship that ran for half a century. The Queen Mother adored Talon. They waltzed together in her sitting room at Clarence House, sometimes daily, after the lunchtime gin and Dubonnet guests had gone home. They giggled about the household. He brought her the trolley up the back stairs in the same order, in the same sequence, 6 mornings a week, for 51 years. Talon was the household. What Talon knew about Birkhall, about who arrived on which weekend, about which corridor was walked at which hour, about which of the Queen Mother's private rooms had had its sheets changed and why, Talon never put in print. He died in 2007 without writing a memoir. His funeral was, in a much-discussed slight, not attended by the royal family. The institution that had used his discretion for 51 years did not, in the end, send anyone to the church. The silence was preserved on both sides. What does survive is the architecture. Birkhall has, by the royal palace's account of the mid-50s extension, single bedrooms on the ground floor and double bedrooms above, accessed by the round staircase tower the Queen paid for. The doubles are above the main staircase. There are not many of them. The mathematics of the house, small lodge, few rooms, decades of overlapping guests, means that anyone who came to stay was given one of a handful of bedrooms. The architecture is the evidence. The architecture is the entire point. By the time Charles and Camilla resumed their relationship in 1986, and the consensus across Sally Bedell Smith, Penny Junor, and Jonathan Dimbleby is 1986, not 1985. Charles was 37, Camilla was 38, Charles was married to Diana, Camilla was married to Andrew Parker Bowles, and the affair was conducted mostly at Highgrove in Gloucestershire, and at Camilla's home, first Bolhide Manor, and then, after 1986, Middlewick House. Bolhide was 15 miles from Highgrove. That was the everyday arrangement. The Highland arrangement was different. The Highland arrangement was the Queen Mother's. Charles had bought Highgrove in 1980. The biographies are consistent on why. The estate was within 15 miles of Bolhide Manor, where Camilla lived with Andrew Parker Bowles. Charles's purchase was, in Sally Bedell Smith's reading, a structural decision. He was buying himself a base near the woman he had loved for nearly a decade and was about to lose to a marriage he was being arranged into. He proposed to Diana the following February. The Bolhide and Highgrove arrangement, by 1986, was a 15-mile triangle that the Cotswold villages had learned to recognize. The Parker Bowles family sold Bolhide Manor in 1986 for £600,000 and moved to Middlewick House. The affair continued. Andrew Parker Bowles, by every account, accommodated it. He had his own arrangements. The everyday triangle worked because everyone inside it had agreed that it would. But the everyday arrangement was suburban. The everyday arrangement was a brick country house with neighbors and a postman. The everyday arrangement could not absorb the kind of weekend that a future king wanted to take with the woman he was in love with, while his wife was in another wing of another house with 2 small children. For the kind of weekend that nobody was supposed to see, Charles needed a different place. He needed a place inside the family. He needed a place where the staff were not paid to talk. He needed Birkhall. And by every available account, his grandmother understood the request before he had to make it. What survives on the record about the Queen Mother's view of the affair is a single line, but it's a line spoken by a royal historian on camera in a documentary that 14 million households watched. The line came from Piers Brendan in the 2017 Netflix documentary The Royal House of Windsor. Brendan said, "The Queen Mother was relatively broad-minded. She didn't mind Prince Charles having an affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, provided that this did not become a scandal. That was what worried her. She had seen what happened in the abdication crisis, where a private matter had blown up into something that had practically wrecked the monarchy." The narrator of the documentary then said in a single sentence, "The Queen Mother allowed the couple to use her Scottish home, Birkhall, as a bolt hole." That is the entire on-camera testimony for the arrangement. One historian, one narrator's line, one word, bolt hole. The word was on her side of the line. She let it happen. She didn't have to. She could have closed the house when Charles asked. She didn't. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. There is a competing account. Christopher Anderson, in his biography of King Charles, says the opposite. The Queen Mother particularly detested Camilla because she was throwing a wrench in the works. Because of Camilla, the monarchy was kind of brought to the brink of destruction. So which is it? The two accounts cannot both be fully true. The most defensible synthesis is the one that comes out of the abdication crisis itself. The Queen Mother prioritized the monarchy over personal feeling. She could detest Camilla and host her in the same week. She had grown up inside the institution that lost a king in 1936 because the public was told the truth too late. She was not going to lose another one. If hosting Camilla at Birkhall meant the affair didn't make the front page, she would host Camilla at Birkhall. That isn't approval. That is calculation. That is the Madam and Marshmallow of the steel that Cecil Beaton named. That isn't fabrication. That is what the record shows. The pattern by the late 80s was set. The staff at Birkhall would be given a date. The cars would arrive separately. Charles came in his usual security. Camilla came in a private vehicle. They didn't arrive at the same hour. The schedule by every adjacent account was the schedule of a household practiced in not being noticed. The Queen Mother's daily routine: gin and Dubonnet at 11:30, lunch at 1, an afternoon outing on the river, a small evening meal, no television, was the surface routine. Underneath it, in a house with limited bedrooms, there was a second routine. Which doors opened, which doors closed, which staff member walked which corridor at which hour. The household, by Tom Quinn's account of William Talon's 51 years of service, was a small and discreet machine. It knew what it was doing. What nobody mentions about the weekends at Birkhall is the accounting. Accounts diverge on the precise count. Hugo Vickers, in his 2005 biography of the Queen Mother, addresses the protectiveness without quantifying the weekends. Tina Brown, in The Palace Papers, addresses the arrangement in narrative rather than enumerative terms. The brief that this video is built from notes the divergence. The archives, the published biographies, and the available staff testimony all stop short of giving a specific number. What is documented is that the visits happened more than once. What is documented is that the visits happened on weekends. What is documented is that the staff knew. What is not documented, and what no one will give us, is the count. Some silences are louder than speeches. The royal suite, the brief calls it that, and the audience already feels the room, is, in the public architectural record, simply a double bedroom above the main staircase. There is no published floor plan that labels it that name. There is no royal household register that gives it a number. What is documented is that Birkhall has, above the round staircase tower, a small set of double bedrooms, and that the Queen Mother had a particular set of guest arrangements, and that the staff would prepare the same room for the same guest. That is the structure of any small country house. What converts it into the actions of a madam is who the guest was, and who was simultaneously expected to come the other weekend. Because Diana came to Birkhall too. Diana, between 1986 and 1996, was the Princess of Wales, the daughter-in-law of the heir's heir, the mother of the future king. She came to Balmoral every August. She brought William and Harry. She fished the Dee with Charles. She was, in the early summers, photographed on the riverbank with the children. She visited the Queen Mother at Birkhall for tea. The drawing room she was received in, the drawing room added in the mid-50s extension, the only drawing room in the house, was the same drawing room. The architecture of the house meant it could not have been any other. The brief calls this the central horror. That the Queen Mother received Diana in the same room she had received Camilla in 2 weekends earlier. The published record does not confirm the 2 weekends interval. The published record does not confirm the same room as a specific narrated event. What the published record does confirm is that the house has one drawing room, and that Camilla came, and that Diana came, and that the same staff served them both. Diana's early relationship with the Queen Mother was, in 1981, the warmest of the in-law relationships. The Queen Mother had match-made the marriage in collaboration with Lady Fermoy, Diana's own grandmother, who had been a woman of the bedchamber to the Queen Mother for decades. The two grandmothers had, in November of 1978, suggested Charles invite the 19-year-old Lady Diana Spencer to his 30th birthday party. The arrangement, in that account, was theirs. Lady Fermoy later denied it. The night before the wedding in July of 1981, Diana stayed at Clarence House under the Queen Mother's roof. The Queen Mother gave her a sapphire and diamond brooch as a wedding gift. The relationship, in 1981, was the institution adopting its newest member. By the late 80s, the relationship had soured. Diana's own biographer, Andrew Morton, would later write that the Queen Mother drove a wedge between Diana and the rest of the family. The story Diana told her own grandmother, the same Lady Fermoy who had match-made the marriage, was that the family she had married into was not the family she had been promised. The Queen Mother had been the warmest figure at the wedding. By 1989, the Queen Mother was, in Diana's reading, the institution itself. The grandmother who had given her the brooch was the same grandmother who was, on the alternate weekends, giving Camilla the run of the house Diana had been invited to for tea. The mathematics of the Birkhall drawing room is what the audience has been calling out for years. The drawing room is one room. The room cannot host 2 arrangements at once. The room can, however, host 2 arrangements in sequence. One weekend, Camilla. The next weekend, Diana. The same staff, the same tea service, the same chair by the fire. The architecture forced the overlap. The architecture is the evidence. Nobody had to lie. Nobody had to engineer the symmetry. The house simply, by its own structure, made the symmetry inevitable. The Queen Mother chose to host both arrangements in the room that made the symmetry visible to anyone who was paying attention. The staff were paying attention. The staff did not write it down. The audience has done the math. The audience has been doing it for years. By 1989, the affair was no longer entirely private. The phone call, Tampon-gate, Camilla-gate, the recording made by an amateur radio enthusiast and then sat on by the press for 4 years before being published in The Sun and the Daily Mirror on the 13th of January 1993, was conducted between Charles and Camilla. It was an intimate phone call. The transcript is now 33 years in the public record. In February of 1989, Diana confronted Camilla at her sister's 40th birthday party. The confrontation is one of the few exchanges from the affair that both parties have, at different points, confirmed. Diana said, "I would just like you to know that I know exactly what is going on between you and Charles. I wasn't born yesterday." Camilla said, "You've got everything you ever wanted. You've got all the men in the world falling in love with you, and you've got 2 beautiful children. What more do you want?" Diana said, "I want my husband." That sentence, 3 words long, is the gap between the public Birkhall, the cozy Highland retreat the obituaries praised, and the private Birkhall, the house in which the Queen Mother, by the only on-record testimony we have, was running interference. Then, in 1992, Diana published, through Andrew Morton, Diana, Her True Story. The Queen Mother read it. Her response, per William Shawcross's official biography, was a single sentence to Sir Eric Anderson, the former provost of Eton. "I told you Diana was a liar." The relationship between Diana and the Queen Mother, which had not been warm since the early 80s, never recovered. Diana, by the mid-90s, was reportedly calling the Queen Mother the chief leper in the leper colony. The pattern of behavior was consistent. The Queen Mother defended the monarchy. Camilla was useful to the monarchy because Charles needed her, and Charles was the monarchy's future. Diana was not useful to the monarchy. The arithmetic was simple. In November of 1995, Diana sat down with Martin Bashir for BBC Panorama. She said the sentence everyone now knows. "There were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." The sentence was about Camilla. The sentence was not about Birkhall. But the sentence was Birkhall, in shorthand. The third person had been welcomed into the family's private rooms on alternate weekends for years, while Diana was being received in the same drawing room and told to behave. By the time anyone in London read the Panorama transcript, the Queen Mother had been hosting Camilla at Birkhall for nearly a decade. The neighbors knew. The villages along the Dee knew. The Glenmuick estate, 14,000 acres of sporting ground, owned by the Walker-Oakover family, adjacent to Birkhall on the east side, had gamekeepers who walk the fence lines and who, by every report that is filtered through Royal Deeside in the years since, had a clear view of which cars arrived on which weekends. The brief refers to gamekeeper testimony. The published record, in 2026, does not contain a signed gamekeeper memoir. What survives is the kind of village-level knowledge that everyone in Aberdeenshire knew, and nobody outside Aberdeenshire was told. The gap between the village and Fleet Street in the late 80s and early 90s was the size of an entire decade. The pattern, taken as a whole, requires explanation. In the 4 years between Tampon Gate's recording and its publication, between 1989 and 1993, the press had the transcript and chose not to print it. In the 3 years between Diana's Morton biography and her Panorama interview, the affair was, in elite British circles, an open conversation. The country knew. The villages knew. The press knew. The only people who were being asked to maintain the fiction of the public Birkhall were the audience watching the evening news. The Queen Mother's discretion was working in one direction only, toward the public, away from the family. Inside the family, the arrangement was already what everyone could see. The marshmallow of steel that Cecil Beaton named was, in this account, a marshmallow softness toward the press and a steel hardness toward the wife of her grandson. The arithmetic was simple. The brief is right about that. Camilla served the future of the throne. Diana did not. The marshmallow was on Camilla's side. The steel was on Diana's. The pattern repeated. Camilla on alternate weekends, Diana on the visits when the children were old enough to come. The same drawing room, the same staff, the same gamekeepers walking the same fence lines, the same Queen Mother greeting both women, by the only door in the house into the same Highland routine. The pattern, by every adjacent account that is filtered out of royal Deeside in the years since, was held for the better part of a decade, and never, in any public source, given the count or the calendar that the audience has been asking for. In July of 1997, Camilla turned 50. Charles threw her a birthday party at Highgrove, in Gloucestershire, on the 17th. 80 guests. Andrew Parker Bowles attended with his second wife. No senior royal attended. Diana, on that day, was in Saint-Tropez with William and Harry at Mohammed Al Fayed's villa. The birthday party was the first public acknowledgement of the affair as an ongoing fact rather than a tabloid story. The week after the birthday, Camilla was in Scotland. The brief calls this the last weekend before Diana's death. The published record does not confirm the specific weekend. What it does confirm is that the household pattern continued through the summer of 1997. The same staff, the same cars, the same rooms, up to the last week of August. On the 31st of August, 1997, Diana died in a tunnel in Paris. William and Harry were at Balmoral. The Queen Mother was at Birkhall, 2 valleys over. The whole country stopped. The household at Birkhall, by every account that has filtered out, observed the news. The boys were brought to Balmoral. Charles flew to Paris and brought Diana's body home. The funeral was on the 6th of September. In the months that followed, Birkhall closed for the winter. The sheets came off the furniture. The gamekeeper walked past the locked front door once a week. The same routine as every winter since 1952. The arrangement, in private, did not stop. Charles canceled a publicized Birkhall holiday with Camilla in late 1997 after public exposure intensified. That fact is on the record in Sally Bedell Smith's reporting. But the private Birkhall arrangement, by the late 90s, was no longer entirely private. In 2000, 3 years after Diana's death, 2 years before the Queen Mother's, Camilla joined Charles on official engagements in Scotland for the first time. The seal of approval came from Queen Elizabeth II at a 60th birthday party for the former Greek king Constantine. By the time the Queen Mother attended her last summer at Birkhall, in the autumn of 2001, the arrangement she had hosted for 15 years had become the future of the monarchy. By the time she died, in March of 2002, and the official royal household record specifies that she died at Royal Lodge in Windsor, not at Birkhall, at 3:15 on the afternoon of the 30th. Camilla had been welcomed into the family in public. The Queen had, reportedly, in 1998, at Balmoral after a drink, called Camilla that wicked woman. That sentence is on the record, via Tom Bower. But the Queen, by 2002, had also stopped saying it. The arithmetic had won. The pattern, taken as a whole, requires explanation. The explanation is the one Piers Brendan gave in 2017. The monarchy comes first. The Queen Mother had grown up inside the institution that almost did not survive 1936. She was not going to lose another king to a Wallis Simpson. If hosting Camilla at Birkhall meant the affair stayed inside the family, she would host Camilla at Birkhall. That is the difference between approval and calculation. Calculation is colder. Calculation is what the audience is naming when it uses the word madam. A madam is not a friend of the lovers. A madam is an administrator of the discretion that lets the lovers continue. The Queen Mother, in this account, was the administrator. She was not endorsing the love. She was protecting the institution. The Birkhall arrangement was the price. Charles inherited Birkhall in 2002. He proposed to Camilla in the same house in December 2004. They married on the 9th of April 2005 and honeymooned at Birkhall the same week. The royal suite, whatever the household actually calls the room, was redecorated. The drawing room downstairs, the only one in the house, was repainted. The gardens were extended. The kitchen the Queen had built in 1980 was kept. The grandfather clocks were kept. The Vanity Fair cartoons on the staircase were kept. The portraits by Cecil Beaton were kept. Charles told Country Life of the river that runs through the garden, that the river is the magic. By the time he was crowned in May 2023, Birkhall had been his official Scottish residence for 21 years. The first public Birkhall weekend with Camilla, after the Queen Mother's death, came in 2005 with the honeymoon. The press was invited. The photographs were arranged. The drawing room they used for the official portrait was the same drawing room. The bedrooms upstairs, accessed by the same round staircase tower the Queen had paid for 50 years earlier, were the same bedrooms. The handover had been completed. The Highland house that had hosted the affair in private was now, in 2005, hosting the marriage in public. The architecture had not changed. The staff had not entirely changed. Some of the long-serving Queen Mother's people remained, and some moved with the new household. What had changed was the part of the arrangement the press was allowed to see. The arrangement itself: Charles, Camilla, this house, this river, this drawing room, was the same arrangement the Queen Mother had hosted on alternate weekends since the mid-80s. Only the angle of the camera was different. By the time she died in 2002, the Queen Mother had completed her work. The monarchy had survived Diana's death, the Morton book, the Panorama interview, the Tampon Gate publication, the public separation, the public divorce, and the public denial. And Camilla, the woman the Queen Mother's own daughter had once called a wicked woman, was on track to be queen. The Queen Mother had hosted that transition, weekend by weekend, in a small Scottish lodge on the River Muick. She did not live to see Camilla crowned. She did not need to. The work had been done. If you have suspected, all those years, that the cozy Highland retreat in the obituaries was the polite version, that the house with the cream walls and the salmon river was also the house in which the monarchy administered a 15-year private arrangement while a young princess was being received in the same drawing room, you weren't imagining things. You were right. The audience that called it the actions of a madam in the comment section was right. The audience that called it disgusting beyond words was right. The audience that named Birkhall 6 times across 3 videos was right. The house, the people who worked in it knew. The institution knew. The village knew. The arrangement was, for 15 years, an open secret in Royal Deeside. It just wasn't an open secret in London. Birkhall today is the Scottish home of King Charles III and Queen Camilla. They spend their wedding anniversary there. The royal suite, above the main staircase, has been redecorated. The gamekeeper from Glenmuick estate retired in 2008 and never wrote a memoir. The Queen Mother died in this house in 2002. Diana never spoke about Birkhall publicly. Charles and Camilla, 25 years after the last weekend the Queen Mother arranged for them under that roof, still walk past the same locked front door together in winter when the sheets come off the furniture. The house, the people who worked in it said, remembers both arrangements equally well.